Welcome to another game review. This time we're looking at this quarter-beat extravaganza known as HiFi Rush, a third-person hack-and-slash platformer that surprised me and many others starting this year off by phantom dropping on January 25th, 2023, hours after it was announced during the Xbox's Developer Direct. This JetSet Radio and Scott Pilgrim vs. the World mashup is developed by Tango Gameworks, who is originally known for the horror games such as Evil Within and Ghostwire Tokyo. This unannounced release for them is only the cherry on top because HiFi Rush is one of those games that's completely filled to the brim with passion and is absolutely pulsating jewel of the game. It gave me a newfound admiration for the amount of detail this game holds and without a doubt made me a new fan of the genre. HiFi Rush is a game I originally played day one right after its announcement and I wasn't sold on it right off the bat, mainly because it's not really my type of game. Thankfully though, after giving it another shot and after accepting the fact I'm absolutely terrible at rhythm games, I eventually could not stop playing. The comic book art style that HiFi Rush sports so vividly is the perfect addition to the 2000s era that they aim for. The colors pop like no other, and the environment breathing to the beat of the music, it really makes this style stand out. The levels are highly detailed, and not a single space goes unfilled. There is some diversity between the levels, but for the most part you can expect an industrial campus with technological advancements. The local diversity is not needed because what it does utilize, it utilizes very well. Making use of the many moving parts a factory generally has is a well-picked setting for a rhythm genre game such as this. HiFi Rush takes that 2D comic book art style and translates it into a 3D world, which gives it a fantastic Saturday morning cartoonish look. I believe this art style makes the transition from cutscene to gameplay extremely easy, which this game takes advantage of time after time again. Even during combat, these visuals impress, from the particle effects that spawn from your combos to the easy-to-read incoming attacks from enemies. The comic book art style even carries over here from the onomatopoeias that exaggerate and give more weight to the many actions you perform. Tango Gameworks did a fantastic job replicating and polishing the style, and I don't think there's a single flaw in this cel-shaded world. If you would like a much more in-depth breakdown on the style and the technique behind it, I highly recommend Stylized Station's video over analyzing the undeniable style of HiFi Rush. When it comes to the voice acting, all were very well done. The delivery of some lines had me exhaling through my nose a little more than usual. In all seriousness, I genuinely laughed out loud a number of times. From the Scottish accents to stoner robots and everything in between, there's some really well performed lines and well written jokes.
Tell ya, you want equality, start with the drinks.
The level of humor in this game is very well done and it's extremely goofy, and it's something another recent release wishes they could actually achieve. The writing itself in HiFi Rush isn't perfect per se, but I did enjoy it overall, especially after completing the first level and getting through some soft introductions of the characters. I felt the story as a whole was pretty predictable, but predictability doesn't necessarily mean bad. It was well told and kept me engaged even in the longer levels that might have needed to be shortened if only by a little bit. The character development of the main character Chai and the crew is great, especially considering that this is only a 12 to 15 hour game. The rest of the cast is highly memorable, and that is where I think it counts the most. The main villain himself, Kale Vanderlei, kinda reminds me in a way of a knockoff Handsome Jack. There's even another character whose entire persona revolves around a JoJo reference. Speaking of references, there are plenty mentioned throughout. If you're one of those people who may like Easter eggs like these, HiFi Rush is the king of it. From Xenogears to the 1990s crime drama Twin Peaks, you won't miss out. Before we move any further and talk about the soundtrack, I do have to point out that HiFi Rush uses several licensed songs throughout their game. Luckily though, they were kind enough to provide a streamer mode for those who do want to avoid any copyright infringement. Streamer mode switches out those licensed songs for literally almost identical pieces of music, guaranteeing you won't miss out on what should have been. Funny enough, those pseudo songs are so close to the actual thing that YouTube's automatic music identifier sometimes think it is the actual licensed song. In my attempt to avoid a copyright strike, I will only be showing the streamer mode versions in their place. It's honestly amazing to me how each one of these songs keeps the same style as its predecessor, while at the same time still being unique and just as good. While 2000 style rock is the most used genre in the game, it is not the only one. Every single one of these songs in this soundtrack is absolutely killer. There's one song in particular I won't be showing for spoiler reasons, but every time I hear it from now on, I will only be able to think about that boss battle that it is tied to. It was such an entertaining fight with the perfect song to go along with it. I got such a huge kick from the soundtrack and instantly added all of them to my own personal playlist. When it comes to the gameplay, as you go from combat encounter to the next, you will spend a bit of time exploring the levels that are generally 3D with a few side-scrolling segments sprinkled into there. Exploring the levels is pretty linear with some hidden items scattered throughout. Additionally, there are gears to gather or collect from defeated enemies that you can spend on purchasing more combos and passive abilities. Collecting these items and progressing through the levels generally means some platforming that I struggled with a little bit at first. Having the ability to double jump 20 feet upwards but only be able to move 3 feet forward got on my nerves at the beginning until I later learned you can dash in the air. Regardless, getting some of the timing down since most of the platformers do move with the beat provides some sort of challenge so you won't be mindlessly moving forward. Overall, I felt engaged throughout the entire game, whether it was through the storytelling or the gameplay. When it comes to the combat, this is where most of your own rhythm comes into play. Attacking on the beat allows you to dish out more damage, making you more effective in combat, but it is not a requirement. You have plenty of combos to choose from, and these are a lot of fun to use, for they all have their own specific use. Some combos do AoE, while others will throw an enemy into the air, allowing you to juggle them at your leisure. Furthermore, you get many other abilities to use, such as calling in your companions to attack, grappling towards your foes for more maneuverability, and parrying, I believe, almost any attack. If I had to critique any of these, which is already extremely difficult to do, it'd be the ability to call in your companions. I just think you're able to spam it way too easily, but towards the end of the game, you do need to call them in multiple times to break certain enemies' defenses. Eventually, I found myself getting to the point of me just constantly spamming that button, causing me to lose my rhythm with my other attacks. Luckily, that's not their only use though, for you can also call in your companions for some sweet combo finishers. In the beginning of the game, there are a ton of tutorials thrown at you, which sometimes can be a pain. In all reality though, in HiFi Rush, these tutorials and hints were actually extremely helpful because they weren't just push jump button to jump. Instead, those hints better explain the combat mechanics, such as the enemies only attack on the beat and your own attacks also land on the beat. I enjoyed this immensely, for it helped me identify that rhythm I kept searching for and helped me understand the combat that much easier. The tips in HiFi Rush were not too long to read, but gave just the right amount of explanation to help you immensely. The best tip I received was mentioning how you can better hold that beat for better combat effectiveness if you push the attack button as your hit lands. What's even better is you don't have to wait for the next combat encounter to practice your newfound techniques. The sentient refrigerator, who appears several times throughout the game and who's the one explaining all this, is more than happy to take the beating. I do think it is entirely possible to beat the game without keeping the rhythm and performing only the most basic of combos. Some encounters are difficult but are 100% fair. Most of the time when I died while playing on normal difficulty is because I missed the timing of a series of parries from a super tough enemy. I think HiFi Rush provides a low skill curve with a high skill ceiling, something that is presumably hard to balance but is perfectly done here. In conclusion, I think HiFi Rush knew exactly what it wanted to be from the very beginning and it never strayed from its path. The direction for this game is very well planned and that's why I can't recommend it enough. I truthfully did not like the game at the beginning, but only because I didn't give enough time. I was a little harsh on it for my first impression, but I'm grateful I gave it another try because it may enter my top games I play this year. From the exceedingly polished art style to the immensely satisfying combat, I found little to no flaws. Though we didn't get any warning about this game's release, this was a very pleasant surprise, and I hope it gets the amount of attention it deserves. Though many are already demanding it deserves Game of the Year, it does have some strong competition concerning this year's releases. Unfortunately though, I believe because it is a niche genre, it stands little to no chance. At the very least, I hope it does get a nomination. Nonetheless, it has easily become my favorite rhythm game, taking the #1 spot on that list, and has made me consider playing many others. The developer Tango Gameworks was kinda typecasted in just the horror genre, but with this HiFi Rush, they truly proved what they're capable of, and I can't wait to see what else they have in store. When all is said and done, I highly suggest this game, and it comes at such a great price for Steam, currently listed at $30 USD, and every penny is without a doubt worth it. And of course, since it was a part of Xbox's Developer Direct, it is also on PC and Xbox Game Pass for those who have it. Give it a try and please tell me what you think. I promise you will not be disappointed.